In yesterday's video, I focused mainly on the fact that West Ham had 19 senior players. We're running on empty, running on fumes really, aren't we? And I actually think I counted 3 goalkeepers as senior players out of that 19. So it doesn't look too pretty. But what I said we'd do today is we'd concentrate on how we were going to rectify that. Some of the names that we're being linked to him coming in. And I think probably more importantly, David Moyes' tactics or his strategy for filling up those places, because he's had quite a lot to say, Moyes, about... He's come out and he's indicated that there's money available. He's certainly indicated that he wants to buy players that can challenge for the top 6. He doesn't want to buy players for the sake of it. And I get that. I totally understand. I get that. But I think there's one thing that I find quite frustrating about the whole thing is it almost seems as if everything is a surprise. Diop leaving is a surprise. And we should have headed this off at the pass. Ogbonna not being back and ready yet seems a surprise. I could go on with a whole list of examples. I did a video on it last season as we were getting towards the end of our European campaign. There don't seem to be a lot of foresight and a lot of planning. Now, I know that's not true. I know David Moyes' plans. I know they've had these targets. And as I mentioned yesterday, if you are at a disadvantage, which West Ham are, you have to move a little bit more quickly than everybody else. So I think looking at it now, when I look at some of the targets that we're linked to, I think, well, this is maybe not a good idea. So, for instance, in the news today, we've been linked with Keane, who's the centre-back at Everton. He was at Burnley, wasn't he, before? And for a loan deal. And they've said, no, look, there's no harm in trying. It's not like we've been trying to get him for weeks and weeks and weeks. But it's things like that. I think, well, that's probably never going to work. Everton have been trying to strengthen their defensive line. They've got a bit of an injury crisis. You know that just as a sort of general football fan. They're unlikely to sell a centre-back, let's be fair, who's represented England. At this point, when they've got a defensive injury crisis, it was the same with bidding for Rafinha. It was in the winter window when Leeds were trying to stay up and stave off relegation. Why would they sell him? They weren't ever going to sell him. I think one of the ones that's really interested me is I was going to say Conor Cody. That one didn't, actually. The Conor Cody one hadn't particularly interested me because I don't ever think we were really in for him. I think we should have been, by the way, because I think we're lacking a leader in terms of, since Mark Noble's left. I'm not saying Declan Rice isn't a leader, but we're one down, aren't we? We're one less. And I think bringing in somebody with good captaincy skills, particularly bearing in mind he was surplus to requirement at Wolves, which I was surprised about, would have been quite a good thing to do. Every time I've seen him interviewed, I've been very, very impressed with Conor Cody. Anyway, that ship sailed. That's fine. What I was going to say was the Conor Gallagher one. Not that I don't like Gallagher, you understand. I do. I think he's a really good player. I think he would suit us really well. I think he'd suit David Moyes really well. But it's doing business with Chelsea again. Chelsea have become quite hard to do business with. And that's fine. That's their prerogative. But you have to be aware of it. It's like Tottenham. Tottenham are known to be difficult. It's not Tottenham as such as Daniel Levy, isn't it? It's known to be difficult to do business with. So I think if we're going to go down that route and we're going to invest too much time, because apparently it's just a loan move, we're going to invest too much time, we have to be careful because we've already been bitten twice on that. Firstly with Breuer, where we chased him for a little while, wasted quite a lot at the transfer window chasing him, and then we didn't get him. Chelsea hasn't changed their mind. Oh, he's available. Oh, he's available on loan. No, we want to have a look at him. Oh, no, he's going back now. There was a lot of chopping and changing. I understand it. They're under new ownership, but they were also doing it last season as well. It took a long time to get the Kurt Zuma deal done when it should have been easy enough. We still end up paying 25 million, which was the sum that was quoted at the start anyway, which we were willing to pay. And Zuma had said he wanted to remain in London. Yeah, I do believe the negotiations were quite protracted and quite drawn out. We've got to be really careful dealing with Chelsea. And there's another reason why I think we really should be careful what we do with Chelsea, and that's to do with Declan Rice. This video is sponsored by Spitch, and Spitch are an absolutely amazing fantasy football app, which you can get by downloading and using that link below. They're a bunch of great guys. They're affiliated to our friends over at One Football, so we know them well. I was going to say there's a really good reason for playing Spitch, but actually there's probably 2 really good reasons. Firstly, what I was going to say is it's a great game. it's the normal thing. You buy and sell players, you get a budget, you make your team up, you can play against your mates. We've got our own Hammers Chat little mini league, actually. But probably the main reason is each week there's up to £70,000 worth of prizes. Now, you can either play for free, and it is a free-to-download app, and you can compete. You can even win money prizes in the free-to-play games. However, if you want to win the big bucks, then you can put down a stake. I don't mean like a sirloin or a rump or a lamb cutlet. Put down a bit of money and you can win the big bucks. For that reason, it's for 18 and over only. Available in the UK, Germany, Austria and Brazil. If you use the link below, they'll know you've come from Hammers Chat. Join up, click the link, join up our mini league, see how you do against me and Gio. Absolutely fantastic app. That is Spitch. Use the link below. So the other thing with Chelsea is the Declan Rice situation. Now, I did a couple of videos about us when we wanted Breuer, sort of leveraging our advantage. What would I mean by that? They want Declan Rice. We don't want to sell him yet, but when he becomes available, the point was we might look favourably upon you. If there's a single person in this chat that thinks Declan Rice is staying, I'll be interested to hear it. And I don't mean like I will mock you or deride you or anything like that. I'll be interested to hear your reasons why Declan Rice is going to stay with us the next 3 or 4 years. I think he's off, and I don't particularly blame him, quite frankly. We're not moving at the pace that he wants to. For all the reasons I said earlier on in this video, we're very, very slow in the way that we're sort of recruiting and doing everything. Declan Rice is a man in a hurry. He's ready now. He's top class now. So one of the places he's going to want to go is Chelsea. And I would have thought that based with them being awkward with us with Breuer, and they were, I think we should have a little bit of tit for tat, really. I think we should say, well, hold on a second, we might not make it as plain and easy sailing for you to get Declan Rice as it should have been. So I think we should be really careful about how we enter into protracted negotiations for Conor Gallagher. Because Chelsea acts like they're just the ones doing us a favour. And you know what? At the moment they are. If we wanted Breuer, it would be them doing us a favour. I totally get it. Totally, okay? If we want Conor Gallagher, it's them doing us a favour. That's fine. But they are going to be in a situation where they want a favour off of us. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a favour, or you just pay. And you just pay big. So I do wonder if there's going to be some sort of oiling in the wheels, and for that reason, we get towards the end of the window, and maybe we do get both those players on loan. But I don't think we can afford to wait until the end of the season, the end of the season, the end of the transfer window, beg your pardon. Because just look at the way the team played in that first game. Now, I understand it. Man City were a force of nature. They really were. It's hard to look beyond them for the Premier League this season. Yeah, I know there's only been one game played. They won their one and Liverpool drew theirs. But the new acquisitions do look formidable, and clearly I'm talking primarily about Haaland here. It's given them a new dynamic, let's put it that way. However, even taking into account how good City were, there were players who played for West Ham. You think they should be bench players this season. So I'm looking forward to new players coming in, but we're going to need more, and we're going to need them quick, because the longer you go into the transfer window, you just lose points, and we can't afford to do that. Let me just take you through to David Moyes' comments, because David Moyes made a few comments about it's about buying players. He spoke to Graham Hunter. You know Graham Hunter, he's a Spanish football correspondent. He said you probably lose your job if you don't recruit particularly well. Recruiting players a big part to play in a managerial job. We started well with the Czech boys. Obviously, you know who he means there. We're now moving on. We bought players when we came in to finish outside the bottom three of the Premier League. Now we need better. What he's saying is, when I first came in and I bought players, they were to get us away from the relegation zone. Now we need a standard above. That's what he's saying. He said, but we've had an unbelievable 2 years where we went from fourth from bottom of the league to pushing for fifth and sixth in the Premier League. So we've sort of continued that. So the next level of player we're looking at now, we're looking at players who can get us into the top six or keep us in the top six. That in itself is a different challenge. Now what he's saying is, I think reading between the lines, he's saying he bought people like Souček, he bought people like Bowen at the time, Dawson maybe, to get us away from that area, to stop us being a relegation team. He's now saying I need to buy better than that. Now, I understand you could make a case for each individual player, and particularly Bowen has really pushed on, and Bowen is no longer just a guy you get to keep you away from relegation. Bowen is close to being a top player, isn't he? He said, but I have to say the club have been really good as far as they're putting up the finances. They're giving me every opportunity to try and do that, but we're still building. If we're going to go and buy the top boys, this is what we've got to do. He said you've got to build by putting a layer on another layer. He said if you have billionaires running your club, you can say we'll spend as much as you like, but we don't have that. Well, we do, but I get what he's saying. So you've got to try and do it a wee bit calculated. We didn't buy anyone in January. It wasn't because the club didn't want to buy anybody. It was because I couldn't find the ones I wanted. We bid really big for top players. So I sort of get a bit annoyed when people often blame the board saying they didn't buy. Let me tell you that they did try to get really good players. What I'm trying to do now is buy players to get a top 6 team. You get the general idea. Okay, well, that's all well and good. But the longer we leave it, the less likely we are to be able to fill those squad placings. And sometimes you're just not going to be able to get those players that he wants to get. And I think it's a very fine segment of players that he's going for. The top guys don't come. He's tried this. Darwin Núñez, Calvin Phillips, Rafinha. We can't get those. He clearly doesn't want the guys that just get you away from relegation. So he's almost going what I would call Europa players. But even then, you know, he chased Kostic. Kostic gone to Juventus. He's just not getting all of the players that he wants. As I said, it's not he's getting no players. We brought players in. Look at the ones we have brought in. But he's getting about half of them, which means he's got to step it up a little bit. And what you may well find is, because he goes on to say, so I probably should have read this bit out earlier, I don't want to sign a cheap player just to fill a space. I'd rather go without than do that, because I'm trying to save money for what I hope might be available in the future. What he's saying is, I'd rather have no players than sign somebody I don't really want. Again, it's admirable. But when you've got a very, very thin squad, then it's sort of less so. If we didn't have a European campaign this season, I'd be less concerned about it. But you look at the way he's trying to bring these players in now, and we're looking at 5 or 6 players that we need to bring in. So are we really in a situation where we're going to be able to bring in 5 or 6 players in that sort of bracket? That let's call them 4-star players rather than 5-star players, Europa-star players. Are we going to be able to bring that many of those in between now and the end of the window? It's been left very late, and this is why I go back to it being a surprise. Why is this a surprise that we're in this situation? Should have known. He talks about not buying in January. We should have known in January that these squad placings were going to need to be filled. We understand he's been offered Emmanuel Dennis from Watford. He doesn't want him. And again, that's fine. I don't buy into this thing. I don't think we've been chasing him loads and loads and loads. I think that's very much paper talk. I never felt we were ever really in for him at all. But it's just another example why fans get frustrated. Oh, no Emmanuel Dennis, no Conor Cody. I don't think we were in for either. Although, as I said, I would have liked to have seen us in for Conor Cody. I really would, because I think he was a very, very good player. You're now looking at the players we're looking to bring in now. A couple of left-backs. So clearly we want a left-back. I understand why things have been delayed for a striker. I understand why things have been delayed for other positions, because we've tried. We don't see what goes on behind the scenes, but why weren't we recruiting for a left-back at the start of the window? It seems like everything has been happening one at a time, basically. And now we seem to be in with a flurry of bids for left-backs. There's no news to anybody. It's no news to any of us that we need a left-back. No news to David Moyes that we need a left-back. And actually, it's one area, as I say, I'm just about to do the build-up, the preview with Gio. It's one area when I talk about that I'm going to be very, very concerned about is left-back. And it's something that needs to be done. But I am concerned that David Moyes will wait too long. It was all right at the start of the window to wait, 3-4 weeks if the Breuer deal had happened. It didn't. He had the backup in Scamacca. Luckily, Scamacca was good-natured enough, I think, just to wait and then sign anyway. You may well find that doesn't happen. He doesn't have the luxury to spend 3 or 4 weeks to find out if the left-back target doesn't happen. Actually, I'm a little bit disappointed that we're getting towards what's going to be deadline now. Probably by the time this video goes up, the deadline will have passed for us to register any players to play at the weekend against Nottingham Forest. I'm really disappointed that a week has gone by when we should. I was going to say could have signed players, should have signed players. A week has gone by and we should have signed players, and it still hasn't happened. How much are we clinging on for Conor Gallagher? How much are we clinging on for whoever? We're short in midfield. We missed out on Onana. We're definitely short in midfield because I was going to say Thomas Souček isn't up to it. I don't want to say that. Because Souček's got a lot going for him. He really has. In a team that's flying and doing well, he does well himself. However, clearly David Moyes doesn't think that. Clearly David Moyes is of the opinion that he wants to buy a player, which is why he bid big for Onana, which is why he bid for Calvin Phillips. I think the other thing is what's quite telling in these comments when he turns around and said when we initially bought players, they were to get us away from the bottom three. Souček was one of those. That's quite important into David Moyes' insight about Souček, of what he perceives him to be as a player, and quite important when you think David Moyes didn't give him that 125 grand a week that Souček was asking for. And that's probably why, basically, Moyes doesn't see Souček as next level. Well, that's fine. He's the manager. He can do that, but it still means he needs to bring somebody in. So, Moyes, get a hurry up, my friend.